Hi, my name is Mark Stipic. I'm the work cover guy. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today I'm answering the question, what goes on in a conciliation conference? So conciliation, as you probably know, is where injured workers can take a matter that they disagree with that's been handled on their work cover claim. Most commonly it's some sort of termination or some sort of adverse decision around their entitlements. Look, essentially when an injured worker disagrees with a decision that's been made, their first port of call is to, you can contact your work cover insurer and ask for an internal review, a desktop review basically, but very, very, very rarely do they actually overturn the decision. That's really just for someone else inside the insurer to check, did we have the right dates on there? Did we have some information to base it on? Yes, okay. So most of the time, if there hasn't been some sort of administrative error, it's unlikely to change the outcome. So secondary to that is the Accident Compensation Conciliation Service, ACCS. Now, what happens during a conciliation? I've been to a number of them. It's a pretty low-key, it's a pretty non-threatening process. It's an opportunity to bring the parties together, so there will be a conciliator appointed by the ACCS, the injured worker and potentially their support people and or interpreter can come. A representative from the work cover insurer must be there, and the employer optionally can come. And a lot of employers don't. The attendance rates for employers are pretty poor, I must say, but I always encourage in probably 80 to 90% of instances that the employer should be there. What happens is that each party is invited to explain why they're there. It usually starts off with the insurer explaining the basis for their decision. Then the injured worker is invited to explain why they believe that's the wrong decision, and the employer can then come in with any other relevant information. From there, there's a relatively informal sort of conversation to pretty much just sort of establish what are the facts, what does the legislation say, is this right or wrong? And look, depending on how much tension there is between the parties, usually it's a pretty non-confrontational environment, and so it's really not anything to be too concerned about. When it comes to the actual process, if there are heated tensions and relationships building up to the conciliation, then it could be a little bit more uncomfortable for you, but the conciliators are pretty good at knowing when, having their finger on the pulse as to when that's likely. And if that's the case, it's probably more likely that they would do a separate rooms conference where you don't actually have everyone in the room. It just means the conciliator gets a bit more exercise because they're going from this room to that room to that room, but it still gets the job done. So that's largely what goes on in a conciliation conference. The goal of a conciliator really is to try and get the parties to form some form of agreement, whether that's a full reinstatement of what the worker wants, or it could be a meeting halfway of like, okay, well, the worker wants X amount, the employer wants nothing, so what if we just sort of meet halfway? If they're not able to broker some sort of agreement between the parties, then they may issue a genuine dispute. Now that's a certificate that says, I've tried to bring the parties together, we couldn't come to agreement, so there's the worker now. Once you get a certificate of genuine dispute, the worker has an option to take the matter to court, basically. So they would need to seek legal advice, and they may well initiate legal proceedings. That's essentially how a conciliation conference runs. No need to be afraid of them. They're pretty low key, and nothing to be afraid of, basically. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Thank you very much for tuning in, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel.